welcome to another episode of the channel. As you can see, I've roped in a assistant today who's going to introduce herself.
Hello, my name's Becca Tan, and I'm game crashing this channel!
So today we're going to have an episode on LARP, and I decided to rope her in because she has a channel called MakingLARP.
Yes. If you don't know, this is Emma. Whenever my channel playlist says the wife, that's her. So you should totally bug her all the time. And also come follow my channel because I'm awesome.
When it comes down to LARP, you know the most stuff, but this is sort of to give an overview of what is LARP for the viewers and the good and bad stuff we've kind of experienced in LARP. To start off with, what is LARP?
Well, we'll go through the very, very basic version at the moment. If you really want to go more in depth, go back to my channel. There's a video called the 5 W's, which goes step by step what LARP is, why we do it, all that kind of stuff. LARP stands for live action roleplay, and it basically forms into two types. You've got sitting around in a room dressed up in character talking to each other, where you don't do combat, and you've got going out into some sort of outdoor or specially made indoor space and hitting each other with foam swords. Sometimes there's some LARPs that are set up that use airsoft weapons, but they're a small niche market, so those are your main two. Things like vampire tend to be your first set. Things that are more fantasy based tend to be your second set with the hitting each other.
As we've done both. I mean, when we first met, you were doing a lot of like indoor LARPs, like
yes.
The vampire, Mind's Eye Theatre, isn't it? That's the LARP version of World of Darkness. And that's how I got into LARP, because she decided to bash me so much that I got fed up and said, fine, let's do it.
One of us. If you just do it for enough years, it works. Honest, guys, everyone just, it just works.
Yeah, so like I started certainly with indoor LARP, and then obviously recently got into the actual proper LARP, like the festival LARPs, like Laurie Trust. But I know you also had experience with Fools and Heroes?
Yeah, Fools and Heroes is a more linear style LARP. So if you ever refer to something called a linear, it's kind of a similar sort of thing as how Fools and Heroes ran. You had one event, and half the people there would be your players, half the people would be your monsters, and they'd go off and have a series of adventures. The monsters would come in waves. Like some puzzles, talky stuff, but mostly you're going off and doing different fights till you get to the final battle. Have the final battle, everyone goes home for tea and biscuits. If it's an all-day event, your teams then switch sides so that the monsters become the players become the monsters. If it's a one-off event, then it would probably switch the next week. So it works a little bit similar doing linears inside of a festival event, but obviously it's a lot more free form at a festival event, where you can go off and do loads of different stuff. You don't just have to do that.
Yeah, I've not actually tried a linear yet in LT, so I've got all that to look forward to.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of like the general basic layout of LARP.
Yeah, basically. I mean, LARP, the main difference between LARP and tabletop roleplay is that you're in kit. So, and also that you're supposed to be in character from a set time, which is generally described as time in, and obviously when it ends it's time out. So yeah, you go around, you're dressed up as your character, and you act everything out. You don't really do too much of, well, you don't do any dice rolling. There might be some randomisation mechanics in a sit-down LARP where you aren't hitting each other with swords for things like combat, but other than that, what happens is what happens. You hit people, you don't hit people, you take damage, you don't take damage, you talk something out or you don't. It's that simple.
Okay, so the next bit is the best experiences that both of us have had in LARP.
Honestly, a lot of my early experiences with LARP were amazing. As I said, first started out with the Fools and Heroes game. Locally in Newcastle, they ran one on a Saturday night, mostly geared towards students. So you wouldn't necessarily start till 11 o'clock at night going around a local forest. So the ability to have really creepy events going on is great, but also it was a public space, so it's just as likely the big scary monster turns out to be a bunch of other teenagers on their way to a rave going, what are you guys doing in your costumes? So that, I mean, the ability to get really emotionally invested is the best thing about LARP compared to tabletop, because there's not really that same break and gaps in between actions.
Okay, whatever.
Whatever, Combat Monkey.
My favourite experiences, well, initially it was certainly in the festival LARP was being a monster, being able to learn the rules mainly, and kind of get a grasp at what the system really, how it really worked. I'd actually say now my preference of monster has actually gone down a lot really. Although it has given me some really great benefits, because certainly in LT they've got a sort of lottery where monsters can choose to enter into a competition, and I ended up winning a third prize at one event, which was really shiny armour. And then on the last of the main lines last year in August, I basically got to make a wish for my character, which was becoming a sliding special, which was pretty awesome. However, that also goes to negatives, because it's completely screwed me over in character, so sake.
Oh, all the angst,
yeah.
All of the angst.
However, like thinking about it now, there's possibly three main things that I've really enjoyed, which is firstly being able to create things. So we've got more into homebrewing through LARP, because so many of our in-character group do it, as well as other people in the Lions faction. So you've got homebrewing, and then you've got level working, which both of them we do.
Yeah.
I know you've got some stuff already on the channel.
Yeah, my channel's Making LARP, so obviously it's all about how to make stuff for LARP. So there's quite a lot of level work, there's quite a lot of other sort of crafts on the channel, if anyone's interested in looking at techniques.
Yeah, so that would be like number one for me. Number two would be being able to get involved in really good combat, either as a monster, as I've said before, and as a player, because I've had some pretty decent battles where someone who's been LARPing for about 15 years or whatever, he didn't see a blow coming, and I went straight in with my sword in the hero moment.
Yeah. Emma is all about the combat when it comes to LARP. I'm much more about the roleplay, because frankly I am a wuss and I do not like being hit. So Emma is playing the group's tank and I'm playing one of the healers. So I run around behind, try not to get hit, and then fix everyone up afterwards. And I get all the angst of, oh no, such and such got down, and can I get to that person in time? And this is much more my style of what I like at the events.
Well, I've got to say, actually, I'm enjoying more talky stuff at the minute rather than combat, mainly because at the minute my knee's not particularly good, so
yeah.
I may have to go non-combat for the one that's in a few weeks. However, yeah, I tend to like the combat. But my third big point would probably be about the people that we've met. LT specifically, I think, is the biggest one in the country, if not in Europe.
It's probably between them and then the whole group of is it Profound Decisions that
run PD.
They run I think 2 different events now. It was Maelstrom, and they're now running Empire. I think they have another game that runs as well, but I can't remember what it's called. It might be Odyssey. I might be getting names confused.
Yeah.
So I think them as a whole, because Empire's really big, is probably about equal size, and then everyone else's tiers down depending.
Yeah. So if you think about like the size of the system, I mean, in the Gathering, I think it's up to 3,000 people turn up for a 4-day event.
And that's a low number. That's certainly the number has gone down, and it's starting to pick back up. So I mean, maybe 10 years time there might be 5,000. I don't know what the max ever was.
Yeah, I mean, like with that kind of size, you're going to end up eventually meeting quite a lot of different people. And I certainly think if it wasn't for LT, I don't think I'd actually keep doing LARP, because you know, the concept of like tabletop RPGs and LARP and things like that kind of creates a certain stereotype of person who does it. I mean, anyone who's seen role models or whatever, which I've decided never been able to watch, just because people go on about it. But off the top of my head, I know someone who's a lawyer, police officer. There's soldiers. There are psychologists. I think there's lecturers as well, those who are like working towards their PhDs. So you know, there's a wide variety of people who are doing this hobby. So it's to say it's not just for geeks might not be the, I don't know.
To be fair, I think mostly there's a lot more geeks than people realise, and obviously when you get to certain professions, there's almost that thing if you hide your entire personal life for various reasons, and so the fact that you're geeky isn't as obvious, whereas we can get away with, you know, wearing geeky tees and everything else in daily life. If you're wearing a suit and tie, no one's going to know whether you've got Superman boxer shorts on underneath. Or pyjamas, or whatever.
So I think that's for best experiences.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for me, the best experiences are always the one that get the most emotional reaction to me, where it almost bleeds through into out of character, where it's me being affected, not just my character. The easiest way to do that is the horror situations. Obviously, there are other sorts of like entanglements you could be involved in that are going to cause that.
You actually totally just reminded me of the Cthulhu weekend.
Yeah,
that
was hilarious.
We had a Cthulhu sort of saga run by two friends of ours who are quite experienced role players and storytellers, and the first one we had was based in their house, and it was sort of set in the 1930s, and they had a servitor of some lesser being or whatever come in, pitch black. They turned off all the powers, and I've never actually nearly peed myself in fear before that night. And then the second one they did in a hostel in the Lake District. What's the Lake District?
I can't remember. It was fair. We mostly stayed in the hostel.
And at the climax, because you were one of the evil people. Who
there was a bunch of us that were NPCing. Some people that had brought characters from previous events that had survived, that had turned into the NPC roles, and some of us that genned up. Just in particular, I was playing her maid, because she was a relatively noble lady, and I was totally a cultist. And there were also NPCs that were backstabbing all the cultists. It was great fun. And then we all got into this giant black cloth with arms and everything sewn into it, and we were a shog-off squeak, like crawling up the stairs to kill everyone. It was a bit of a nightmare getting around the stairs and stuff. There's like 10 of us all with like different arms and stuff. But the look on people's faces, and there was one girl that actually had like a full-blown out-of-character panic attack and locked herself in the toilet, which if you're doing a horror campaign, that kind of says everything you need to know about the scare level that we got to.
Yeah, I should point out the person who had a panic attack wasn't me, even though I literally tried to run out of the village to escape it because I'd had enough. So it just goes to show just how much work they put into the game. It's not funny, it was scary.
Yes, that's why it's funny.
I hate you.
Yes, I know.
So beyond the best bits, what about the worst parts of the LARP?
Oh, out of character drama. Out of character drama is what kills LARP games. Not so much event LARPs, because there's so many of you. The worst case, you move faction or guild or whatever and just try not to deal with people. Out of character drama is the killer, because unfortunately when you have a group of more than 10 people, the likelihood of at least one of them to have a falling out with somebody else, whether that's for in-character reasons, out-of-character reasons, a mixture of the two, is so high. I mean, you probably know yourselves, if you get a group of 10 friends together with no geek basis, there's probably 2 of them that don't actually like each other, that are friends of friends. So yeah, that sort of thing happens. Sometimes it's IC stuff spilling out into OC, where someone thinks you're really angry at them out of character for something that was totally in character, or especially at the smaller games when we used to run Vampire, you know, as refs we would have to make calls, and there were definitely times where either we just had to make a call, it wasn't a rules call, and someone came back and said, actually, looking at page 1000 or something in this specific rule book, you did it wrong, and there's nothing you can do because it's already happened. You can't go back and change all the role play everybody else has had. So it's a hard line to follow, that sort of thing. It's the worst. As long as you can sort it out of character afterwards and everyone can patch up with your friends again, great. Sometimes things go wrong and you just have to make the best of it and just try and make sure it's the most fun for you and everybody else.
I think what you're saying about certainly about ref and stuff and it causing problems. Certainly for me, because when I ran Vampire, it was my first ever time GMing properly. You know, we're going to make mistakes. Ultimately, it's the raw ref's decision is final, all that blah blah blah. And I think on the most part, I think the LC seemed to run it really well. I think the problems that we had.
We were noobs. We didn't know what we were doing.
Noobs, but also I think it was. If you're at a soccer, football match or whatever, and you know if stuff happens, you see the players go right towards the ref. You imagine that kind of scene, because for a newbie GM to have that come at you, that's not nice. And I mean, ultimately, that destroyed my keen for running a game ever again. I don't think I will run one again because, frankly, I don't want to have to deal with the hassle.
Yeah, unfortunately we found that most of our friends that still run games in the area run very exclusive games, very much on the style of these are the rules, it's a dictatorship. If you turn up, you would agree that you're following the rules, that you're not going to do any of that stuff, and that simply won't let certain people through the doors. And it's a shame when you're friends with some of the people that won't be allowed back into certain games, because they might be lovely people, or it might be they don't suit a certain type of game but would be fine in this new environment, but stuff's happened and it's just caused backlash.
Yeah, so you said like obviously out of character drama and stuff like that, that comes down to rules and also like possible out of character.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes people just get caught up in a moment in character and they don't understand the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you do occasionally get people that are going the other way, where they have a problem with you or like you too much out of character and don't understand that they can't just use their character as a way of getting to do that situation again, because you can't automatically now have the same relationship you did out of character. It's an issue. But it's an issue that's always going to come up when you're playing characters. And that's not in a pre-scripted role where everyone knows what's going to happen.
I've got two main bad bits that I've experienced. Weather, you know, I don't even like, you know, if you've never LARPed before, I think you must have put it on one of your episodes, but for God's sake, bring layers. I didn't realise I didn't realise this on my first event, which was in spring, but it was -5. I got to the point where someone had to get me into the hotel room so that I could sleep on the floor because I was miserable. I was a cow. I was just, you know, I wasn't happy.
It was not good. It's like we finally convinced her to come after her putting it off for years after the bad experience with Vampire LARP, and then it was awful and it didn't help. You were on like medication stuff all the time, so you couldn't join in with drinking with everybody. It was it's not good. The big thing with any camping event, especially if you are not driving yourself down, you're relying on other people, you've got to basically overpack. It is much better if you take way too many layers and leave them in your tent than you don't take enough layers and you are freezing. Or if the weather turns nice and suddenly you've got to do a sunscreen and you're getting burnt, you've not got enough water, or you haven't got a water carrier for you to go get some from the standpipe, or you're getting bit by insects. You kind of need to prepare for all seasons as much as possible whilst being able to get it in a way you can transport it. So it's great if you've got lifts or a car yourself. Obviously, if you are relying on public transport of some kind, whether that's a train or whatever, that's when you really run into issues, because you are limited in how much you can physically carry.
Yeah. So yeah, weather. I mean, you can't really always predict what's going to happen, but yeah, pack the layers. Actually, also anticipate, because I've completely forgot about this one as well. Anticipate the kind of like shock. I don't know if you've ever been to a festival before, but for me, I'd never been to like large scale event like that before, and just the amount of people, it was just it was horrific to me at the time, because it was just like, shit, I can't actually deal with this, because there's like so many people and you're not really prepared for that sort of stuff. And certainly for a newbie who's trying to learn the rules, get the grips with the weather, the whole concept of the whole combat, how that works, and then, you know, having to do that in a field of about 1,500 people was truly awful. However, it was mainly that I needed to adjust more than anything else, I think.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, the best way to do that is compartmentalise. If you're going to events that can have lots of people, they're probably going to split up into groups. So if you've got a group of your own friends, even if you need to stay with the same 5 or 6 people to keep yourself grounded, rather than even interacting with the rest of the faction as a whole, or the rest of the field, then you might need to do that for the first event or two whilst you're finding your feet. But yes, if you're going to an event, it's probably going to have a lot of people. Even like a smaller sanctioned event, which was one we just went to a few weekends ago, that had about 90 people there, including all the monster team. So if you're not used to being in a larger group, it can be a bit awkward and weird, especially when you're trying to get to know everyone, not just in character but out of character at the same time.
My last big negative experience is mainly for those who I don't know whether or not people will know the term of drum rolling, which would be when, yes, if you've got a weapon that you're supposed to have like a standard kind of length of like how far you draw it back before you hit again. It's basically, I think it's the length of the weapon itself. So it's obviously daggers, you'll have faster hits.
A great sword is probably going to be a full-on swing.
Yeah. But with that also comes the issue that I really have is people not pulling their blows, and this isn't just about newbies doing it as well. I've seen people who have been with the system for many years, and they've given people really big whacks on the head with a polearm, and I know they want to sort of consider polearm competency tests and all that lot, which frankly I've got to the point where I don't know if this is considered metagaming or what, but regardless if I'm a player or a monster, if I see anyone with polearm, I can wear clear of them, because it's about out-of-character safety for me at that point. I've been hit far too many times myself to trust anyone with one, and that's a shame, because I know there are some decent ones out there who know how to do it safely. I think people, I don't know if they're just scared that their character's going to die or whatever, but
it really doesn't help as well when there's night fighting. Night fighting is part of the game because timeout is not till 2 in the morning, so when the sun sets and you're in a campground, so there's not that much artificial light, you know, people are going to be fighting in the dark, and unfortunately, especially polearms, that makes it much harder to judge safe distances and things like that. I know certainly for bows, they have very strict rules about when they can't use them, so they wouldn't be able to shoot a bow in the dark because you can't judge. So some weapons are going to have certain things. Obviously, if you're a dagger, by the time someone's close enough that you're hitting with them with a dagger, you can see them fairly well, even in dim lighting.
So anyone with polearm watching this, I'm not
pull your blows!
Pull your blows and stop being a dick. So, where do they go to find more information on LARP?
Okay, well, you can go to my channel. As I've said repeatedly, it's MakingLARP, and I'm sure there'll be a link in the doobly-doo. Other than that, the best resources are the different websites for the various LARPs you're going to go to. Generally, if you stick LARP and your city name into Google, it will tell you if there's an area. Student unions are probably most likely to have a dedicated LARP group or RPG group, who will probably be the people that know about games going on in your area, as well as any local gaming shops, Travelling Man, Forbidden Planet, any local independent ones you've got. The next best thing is then looking online for RPG groups, but again, that's probably best off probably best off looking at Facebook. It seems to be where actual players are interacting. The main websites tend to be more information based, sort of here we are, this is when our games are, sort of information where if you wanted to ask more individual questions then you're probably better off asking other players.
Leave your comments as always below. If anyone's actually done any yet, I don't know. Like, subscribe, share, go to her channel, and yeah, at some point we'll probably put some LARP pictures up.
Ooh. Yes, hopefully.